Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy. My channel is Finding Value. Today we're going to go over an article. It's called The Biggest Problem with the Green Energy Revolution. And this person, Gail, she does a good job of breaking it down. It's almost like reading an article that I would write, very similar. And if this viewpoint is right, oil is completely mispriced to the downside. It needs to be far higher. I know that seems weird, but we are running straight at an energy crisis, and we're still at only $100 a barrel. And I know $100 a barrel, people say it's expensive. Just wait and see what's coming. Wait and see what's coming, because I think if we can't build inventory, and we've been declining, week after week after week, it just declines inventory. We are getting to very low levels, and we're seeing that the renewables are actually causing more volatility in the market. We have a war going on, which is a good, producer of oil. If that oil doesn't hit the market, I mean, we could be this could be really mispriced. You could double the price of oil easily without even within a blink of an eye. But let's go over this right here, this article. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Make it a lot bigger. It says the biggest problem with green energy revolution. It says it's becoming clear that intermittent wind and solar cannot be counted on to provide adequate supply when it's most needed. Adequate storage for electricity is not feasible in any reasonable time frame. That's a huge one there, and that's kind of what I'm banking on, is they don't have the storage for electricity, and they can't solve it. The world economy seems already to be reaching limits on the extraction of coal and natural gas to be used for balancing electricity provided by intermittent renewables. And I completely agree. They also have blockaded coal and natural gas, the investments going to it, and they I guess disguise that under the ESG movement. They're saying environmental social governance. We don't want these emissions, these high carbon emissions. So they're blocking a lot of investment from going to coal. They don't want natural gas. And I don't know, even if that investment was going in there, that at some point we will not be able to produce as much coal and natural gas anyway. But I also don't think that the renewables are necessarily the answer. It's a weird situation that we're in. It says, we've been told that intermittent electricity from wind and solar, perhaps along with hydroelectric generation, hydro, can be the basis of a green economy. Things are increasingly not working out as planned, however. Natural gas or coal used for balancing the intermittent output of renewables is increasingly high-priced or not available. It is becoming clear that modulars who encouraged the view that a smooth transition to wind, solar, and hydro is possible have missed some important points. And I'm going to go over these very important points and just do a brief overview of what this article says. It says, number one, it is becoming clear that intermittent wind and solar cannot be counted on to provide adequate electricity supply when the electrical distribution system needs them. Basically, they're intermittent, and when the demand goes up, they're not producing electricity when the demand wants the electricity. And with no way of storing them, it's difficult to balance out the grid. So it says they did not expect the variability of wind and solar to be a huge problem. They seem to believe that with the use of enough intermittent renewables, their variability would cancel each other out. Alternatively, long transmission lines would allow enough transfer of electricity between locations to largely offset the variability. Problem is, it's not working out that way. In practice, variability is still a major problem. For example, in the third quarter of 2021, weak winds were a significant contributor to Europe's power crunch. Europe's largest wind producers produced only 14% of the installed capacity during this period. And guys, these things only produce between 20 and 30% is what they usually calculate. So it says compared with an average of 20 to 26%. No one had planned this kind of 3-month shortfall. China experienced dry, windless weather, so that both its generation from wind and hydro were low. The country found it needed to use rolling blackouts to deal with the situation. This led to traffic lights failing and many families needing to eat candle-lit dinners. In Europe, with low electricity supply, Kosovo has needed to use rolling blackouts as well. So what they're doing is they're managing it by rolling blackouts. Number two, adequate storage for electricity is not feasible in any reasonable time frame. This means that if cold countries are not to freeze in the dark during winter, fossil fuel backup is likely to be needed for many years in the future. One workaround for electricity variability is storage, obviously. Looking here, it says still more than a decade away from being able to scale this storage. Thus, having huge batteries or hydrogen storage at the scale needed for months of storage is not something that can reasonably be created now or even in the next several years. Today, the amounts of electricity storage that is available can be measured in minutes or hours. That is it. It is mostly used to buffer short-term changes, such as the wind temporarily ceasing to blow or a rapid transition creating when the sun sets and citizens are in the midst of a cooking dinner. What is needed is the capacity for multiple months of electricity storage. Such storage will require an amazingly large quantity of materials to produce. Needless to say, if such storage were included, the cost of the overall electrical system would be substantially higher than we have been led to believe. All major types of cost analysis leave out the need for storage if balancing with other electricity production is not available. If no solution is an adequate electricity supply not be found, then demand must be reduced by one means or another. One approach is to close businesses or schools. Another approach is rolling blackouts. A third approach is to permit astronomically high electricity prices, squeezing out some buyers of electricity. A fourth balancing approach is to introduce recession, perhaps by raising interest rates. Recessions cut back on demand for all non-essential goods and services. Number 3, after many years of subsidies and mandates, today's green electricity is only a tiny fraction of what is needed to keep our current economy operating. Now, I'm going to jump in here real quick. We went over the problems, right? We're going over all these problems. There's a lot of problems with the intermittency with the renewables. We don't have any electricity, a good way to store electricity. And if we do implement that, it's going to be very cost prohibitive. Now, if you look at how much renewables we're actually deploying into the system, it's basically very little, and it's blowing everything up. So with only a few percent adoption rate of renewables, we literally can't integrate it into the system. What makes you think that we're going to integrate this into the system? And if we try to store electricity, it's going to price renewables out of it. We're in a weird situation here, a very weird situation, where we're trying to implement this stuff. It's probably too early to implement it. The technology isn't good. It just doesn't work. That's what we've seen in practice, at least so far. Number 3, after many years of subsidies and mandates, today's green electricity is only a tiny fraction of what is needed to keep our current economy operating. So as compared to today's total world energy consumption, in 2020, wind accounted for 3% of the world's total energy consumption, and solar amounted to 1% of total energy, using BP's generous way of counting electricity relative to other types of energy. Thus, the combination of wind and solar produced 4% of the world energy in 2020. And what I'm going to say is, if it only produced 4% and it's blowing all this stuff up, imagine if we put 10 or 20% of this stuff in. This is going to be a joke. It really is. And I'm not anti-green. I'm very pro-green. I want nuclear because it's an actual solution. And you can store its energy by having inventory of uranium. It's a very easy solution. And it's proving to be a much better solution than any of these renewables. The IEA uses less generous approach for crediting electricity. This one only credited about 2% of the world's energy supply in 2018. Hydro is another type of green electricity that's sometimes considered alongside wind and solar. It's quite a bit larger than either wind or solar and amounted to 7% of the world's energy supply in 2020. If you take everything together, it's about 11% of the world's energy supply in 2020. This is it right here, looking at wind, solar, and hydro as a percent of the total energy in 2020. EU, China, UK, all other, world, Australia, and here's US, as this is starting to ramp up. As expected, the world average is about 11%. Number 4, even as percentage of electricity, rather than total energy, renewables still comprised a relatively small share in 2020. So wind and solar, they don't replace dispatchable generation. They provide some temporary electricity supply, but they tend to make the overall electrical system more difficult to operate because of their variability introduced. Moving on down, if analysts give wind and solar full credit for replacing electricity as BP does, then On a world basis, wind electricity replaced 6% of total electricity consumed in 2020. I bet you I'm willing to bet that renewables only offset the growth. They didn't even dig into the base. How can I say it? They only offset the growth. I bet you we grew about that in electricity supply worldwide, about 6%. That's probably my guess, over a couple-year period. It says the all other grouping of countries shown in Figure 2, including many of the poor countries. These countries often use quite a bit of hydro, even though the availability of hydro tends to fluctuate a great deal, depending on weather conditions. Number 5, let's move down here. Most modulars have not understood that reserve to production ratios greatly overstate the amount of fossil fuels and other minerals that the economy will be able to extract. What does that mean? Let's read here. It says most modelers, I say modulars, it's modelers, have not understood how the world economy operates. They have assumed that as long as we have technical capability to extract fossil fuels or minerals, we will be able to do so. A popular way of looking at resources availability is a reserve to production ratio. These ratios represent an estimate of how many years of production might continue if extraction is continued at the same rate as in most recent years, considering known resources and current technology. Reserve to production ratios: oil 50 years, coal a little over 140 years, natural gas, cobalt, lithium, and rare earths. It makes it look like we have all of these minerals in large quantities. It says a common belief is that these ratios understate how much of each resource is available, partly because technology keeps improving, and partly because exploration of these minerals may not be complete. In fact, this model of future resource availability greatly overstates the quantity of future resources that can actually be extracted. The problem is that the world economy tends to run short of many types of resources simultaneously. So what she's saying is that we're coming into a period where we think we have more than what we actually have. And if we run into problems, we're going to run into problems with a bunch of different things all at the same time. Think of resource constraints in a finite world. So what she's probably going to get into is that we can't do everything. We can't run into problems simultaneously with 5, 6, 7 different minerals, and then try to extract them and invest in them all at the same time. It's going to be very difficult. So she says, for example, shows that prices were high in January of 2022 for many materials, including fossil fuels, fertilizers, aluminum, copper, iron ore, nickel, tin, and zinc. Sounds like our investment portfolio guys. Even though prices have run up very high, this is not an indication that producers will be able to use these high prices to extract more of these required materials. In order to produce more fossil fuels and more minerals of any kind, preparation must be started years in advance. New oil wells must be built in suitable locations. New mines for copper or lithium or rare earth minerals must be built. Workers must be trained for all these areas. High prices for many commodities can be a sign of temporary high demand, or it can be a sign that something is seriously wrong with the system. That is where I am at. Or something can be a sign that something is seriously wrong with the system. There's no way the system can ramp up needed production in a huge number of areas at once. Supply lines will break. Recession is likely to set in. The problem underlying the recent spike in prices seems to be diminishing returns. Such diminishing returns affect nearly all parts of the economy simultaneously. For each type of miners produced the easiest to extract materials first. They later moved on to deeper oil wells and minerals from lower ore grades. Pollution gradually grew, so it too needed greater investment. At the same time, world population has been growing, so the economy has required more food, fresh water, and goods of many kinds. These too require the investment of resources of many kinds. The problem that eventually hits the economy is that it cannot maintain economic growth. Too many areas of the economy require investment simultaneously because diminishing returns keeps ramping up investment needs. The investment is not simply a financial investment, it is an investment of physical resources, oil, coal, steel, copper, etc., and an investment of people's time. The way in which the economy would run short of investment materials was simulated in the 1972 book, The Limits to Growth. The book gave the results of a number of simulations regarding how the world economy would behave in the future. Virtually all of the simulations indicated that eventually the economy would reach limits to growth. A major problem was that too large a share of the output of the economy was needed for reinvestment, leaving too little for other resources. In the base model, such limits to growth came about now, in the middle of the first half of the 21st century. The economy would stop growing and gradually start to collapse. Number 6, the world economy seems already to be reaching limits on the extraction of coal and natural gas to be used for balancing electricity provided by intermittent renewables. Coal and natural gas are expensive to transport, so if they're exported, they primarily tend to be exported to countries that are nearby. If we analyze natural gas imports by part of the world, 2 regions stand out as having the most out-of-region natural gas imports: Europe and Asia Pacific. And that's where the prices have been going berserk. And this is the total Europe natural gas imports compared to Asia Pacific natural gas. So Asia Pacific's just been ramping from a left to right, and Europe's also ramping up since 2014 quite dramatically. It says the reason why Asia Pacific imports have been growing is to support growing manufacturing output. So that's pretty obvious here. It says Europe natural gas production, consumption, and imports. Their production has been declining, so obviously they're going to have to import more. Red lines, the imports, the blue lines, the production line that's declining, and the consumption is declining somewhat. But they're going to have to ramp their imports up. So it says figure 6 below shows that Asia Pacific's total energy consumption per capita has been growing. This is Asia Pacific energy consumption per capita. Europe's been flat to declining. It's declining some. Asia Pacific, since they're in the middle of their S curve in terms of energy use, has been increasing. You would say the same thing with India, China, all that. Per capita energy consumption's going up. And I'm sure Africa's the same way. They hardly use any energy to begin with. So that only really can move up as well. Europe has recently been having conflicts with Russia over natural gas. The world seems to be reaching a situation where there are not enough natural gas exports to go around. The Asia Pacific region seems to be able to outbid Europe when local natural gas supply is inadequate. Below gives a rough idea of the quantity of exports available from Russia compared to Europe's import needs. Here is the Europe import needs is higher than the Russian affiliates' exports. So they're getting squeezed and their inventories are being drawn down. That's why we're seeing ludicrous pricing in natural gas in Asia and Europe. Europe is already encountering multiple natural gas problems. Its supply from North Africa is not as reliable as in the past. Countries of Russia are not delivering as much natural gas as Europe would like, and spot prices especially seem to be way too high. There's pipeline disagreements, and Russia will be increasing its exports to China in the future years. So lots of problems going on with natural gas over in Europe and the Pacific Asia. USA, potential source of natural gas. USA is starting to come back up and export natural gas, LNG. So that's good. I'm going to skip through some of this. Europe, coal production, consumption, and imports. Consumption's going down. Production's also going down, and imports have been going down a little bit as well. It says, with respect to coal, the situation in Europe is only a little different. Figure 9 shows that Europe's coal supply has been depleting, and imports have not been able to offset this depletion. If a person looks around the world for places to get more imports for Europe, there aren't many choices. And this is the world coal production. It's basically been flat for the world. Coming on down, number 7, conclusion. So this is the conclusion here. It says, modelers and leaders everywhere have had a basic misunderstanding of how the economy operates and what limits we are up against. This misunderstanding has allowed scientists to put together models that are far from the situation we are actually facing. The economy operates as an integrated whole, just as a body of a human being operates as an integrated whole, rather than a collection of cells of different types. This is something most modelers don't understand, and their techniques are not equipped to deal with. The economy is facing many limits simultaneously. Too many people, too much pollution, too few fish in the ocean, more difficult to extract fossil fuels, and many others. The way these limits play out seems to be the way the models in the 1972 book, The Limits to Growth, suggest. They play out on a combined basis. The real problem is that diminishing returns leads to huge investment needs in many areas simultaneously. One or two of these investment needs could perhaps be handled, but not all of them all at once. The approach of modelers practically everywhere is to break down a problem into small parts and assume that each part of the problem can be solved independently. Thus, those concerned with peak oil have been concerned about running out of oil. Finding substitutes seemed to be important. Those concerned about climate change were convinced that huge amounts of fossil fuels remain to be extracted, even more than the amounts indicated by reserve to production ratios. Their concern was finding substitutes for the huge amount of fossil fuels that they believed remained to be extracted, which could cause climate change. Politicians could see that there was some sort of huge problem on the horizon, but they didn't understand what it was. The idea of substituting renewables for fossil fuels seemed to be a solution that would make both peak oilers and those concerned about climate change happy. Models based on the substitution of renewables for fossil fuels seemed to please almost everyone. The renewables approach suggested that we have a very long time frame to deal with, putting the problem off as long into the future as possible. Today, we are starting to see that renewables are not able to live up to the promise modelers hoped they would have. Exactly how the situation will play out is not entirely clear, but it looks like we will all have a front row seats in finding out what's going to happen. So I just wanted to read this article, guys. There's a lot of stuff in there that scares me. It scares me that we could be running into problems all at the same time. And obviously I know this. I mean, that we've been looking at it. We can see it in all the charts. The charts are saying that we have a crisis in copper, in rare earth metals, in aluminum, in energy. I mean, it's across everything. You can't have a problem in everything and be able to solve all of it in one shot. Things will have to be sacrificed. They say, I don't know if I like this saying. They say high prices solve high prices. My question is, what if high prices doesn't solve high prices? What if we have a physical molecule crisis where high prices cannot bring on the required supplies? And sure, it's going to dampen demand, but all we're going to be doing is hitting a ceiling. Way back in the day, Colin Campbell, I think he passed. I don't know if he's still living or if he passed away, but he's an oil geologist. He said when peak oil comes, what you're going to see in the economy is you're going to have like a hard ceiling where the economy will want to grow. You hit this ceiling, prices spike, and then you hit a recession and it comes back down. And it repeats over and over as the economy tries to grow, but it can't. And it hits the ceiling of, we'll call it a limit to growth, however you want to say it, but it hits a ceiling and it just goes back and forth. Ceiling, recession, ceiling, recession. And it's just these huge spikes of oil, huge spikes of prices, the cost of minerals and whatnot. And remember, if you have a shortage of oil, I mean, what are you going to use to extract all these minerals? This is the reason why I think physical metals are so important, because I think that we're probably approaching something like a limits to growth. Will technology save us? Doubt it, because technology doesn't create energy. Energy is the only thing that we've never been able to produce or replicate. We just gather it from our environment, and then we use it. Fusion would be a game changer. That one, I would say, would be a game changer, and that's something that we need to develop. In the interim, I would think that fission, nuclear, would be the way to go, because you're literally going to have nothing else to go to. If energy becomes a problem, and in the renewables, energy is a high input cost, then your renewable costs are going to go to the moon as your energy costs go up. So you're going to need something that's not mineral intensive, but can generate a lot of energy and a lot of free energy to society to do work. If we're going to be generating electricity, and that's the way we're going to go, I would think that nuclear could be a good bridge into something else like fusion. So fission will get us to fusion eventually. But I wanted to go over this article, share it with everybody. If you guys like it, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And thank you for listening. This is Finding Value.